Shadows, a Clark Ashton Smith podcast.
When Giles Angarth disappeared nearly 2 years ago, we had been friends for a decade or more, and I knew him as well as anyone could purport to know him. Yet the thing was no less a mystery to me than to others at the time, and until now it has remained a mystery. Like the rest, I sometimes thought that he and Eban had designed it all between them as a huge insoluble hoax, and that they were still alive, somewhere, and laughing at the world that was so sorely baffled by their disappearance. And until I at last decided to visit Crater Ridge and find, if I could, the two boulders mentioned by Angarth's narrative, no one had uncovered any trace of the missing men or heard even the faintest rumor concerning them. The whole affair, it seemed, was likely to remain the most singular and exacerbating riddle.
Hello, friends, and thanks for joining us today for Season 2, Episode 10 of Strange Shadows, the Clark Ashton Smith podcast. The voice you just heard was Mark Griffin of the 30-plus Minutes with HP Lovecraft podcast, reading the opening paragraph of the first story that we're covering today. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Poynton.
And I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. Yeah, today we're covering two stories, one fairly decently sized and one absolutely minuscule. The City of the Singing Flame and A Good Embalmer.
Yes, and I think City of the Singing Flame is one of the best-known Smith stories, I guess, and regarded as one of his classics, and rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. It's included in the Dark Eidolon collection, the Penguin Classics collection of Smith stuff is in there.
All right.
So yeah, it's one of his best known stories. It's very visual again, isn't it?
Yes, and it's one of those. I was thinking, is this an Alban story or is it a sci-fi story? It sort of straddles the two, doesn't it? This one quite nicely.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking that right at the beginning of it. I think it would fit into his Alban cycle. Which isn't a thing that but it is now because we've made it. So, yeah.
And as we go along, we can see that Smith is obviously drawing on a lot of local knowledge for this one.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes. All right, so shall we begin with our favourite words?
Indeed, yeah. In the City of a Singing Flame, the one that jumped out at me straight away was scoriac. No idea how you pronounce it, but I think it's scoriac.
I would have gone for scoriac as well.
Yeah, which scoria or scoriaceous, which is a rough, cindery crust that forms on solidified lava. And I'm really glad to now know what that's called, because it's one of them things. As a kid, I had one of those. I picked it. I think I got it from like the Blue John mine or something as a kid, on one of day trips. And it had like chunks of gemstone in it.
Oh, nice.
And it just called it lava crust.
Lava crust. There's a proper name for it.
There you go. Yeah.
My first choice is Anakim, which, of course, puts you in mind of Star Wars. The Anakim, it's a biblical reference, and they were giants who inhabited the area around South Palestine and who were expelled by Joshua. And there's speculation that Goliath was a descendant of the Anakim.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice.
Not be to confuse with the Nephilim.
Yes.
There were another lot of giants. The Nephilim were a little more kind of supernatural, I think, weren't they?
Yeah.
Whereas the Anakim just seemed to be big humans, giant humans, basically.
And instantly my brain, I've now got Moonchild playing in my head because you mentioned the Nephilim.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, moving into the second story, got a few in this one. Got two meaning very similar things. It was pursy, which is corpulent or fat, and abdominous, which is large of belly. Yeah, which I my brain instantly started thinking that I could use for Eugene Angove, a description of, like, his manservant could say that he has an alcoholically induced abdominousness, a beer belly.
Another one I've got, and I had to look this one up. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before or not. And again, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but I'm going to go with caryatides, which is to stand very still like a statue.
Mm.
And that is from the caryatids, which were sculpted Greek figures. They were used as like pillars, as columns. you'll have seen them on it's rather than just a plain column, it's actually a statue, and the plinth is resting on its head kind of thing. Always female figures, I think they were.
Yeah, I know the ones. Yeah, they have them in the town hall in Macclesfield.
Oh, right.
Because it's done in that sort of Greek style, the interior. Yeah, it's very strange. Middle of Macclesfield.
Culture in Macclesfield, who'd have thunk it?
I know, it's weird. It's weird, right? Yeah. Again, we had two in the same sentence. We had jocose, which is just another word for jocular, and rubicund, which I really liked, which is ruddy.
Yeah, I like that word as well. That's nice.
Yeah, so in that context, it's basically rude. Yeah, basically the guy was being rude in that context.
All right, so how did Smith get on selling this story? Did he get it published easily?
Relatively, yeah. It was written on January the 15th, 1931. And as I was digging into this, I found out something interesting. The City of the Singing Flame appears to have been inspired by a rock.
A rock. Mm.
In the autumn of 1930, Smith sent Lovecraft a specimen of rock from Crater Ridge near the Donner Pass in Northern California. And its form suggested various outre entities from his story. Lovecraft was delighted with it, and it was basically similar to what happened with the statue, you know?
Or the Sarthoguera statue.
Yeah. Lovecraft basically went off on a tangent with it and bestowed upon it various nicknames such as He Who Waits and the Nameless Icon.
Nice.
Yeah. So maybe because of these associations, Smith wrote it in a single day. And he announced to HBL he had written a new trans-dimensional story in which I've utilized Crater Ridge, the place where I found the innominable icon, as a springboard. Someday I must look for those two boulders with a vague resemblance to broken down columns. If you and other correspondents cease to hear from me thereafter, you can surmise what has happened. The description of the ridge, by the way, has been praised for its realism by people who know the place.
Excellent.
Yeah. And Lovecraft loved it and responded even more enthusiastically than usual. Gad, sir, but you have struck 12 with this latest opus. I don't know when anything has given me such a kick in months, for the whole thing corresponds to just the sort of dreaming I relish and just the sort of dimensional plunging I tend to envisage when faced by a flaming and apocalyptic sunset. That's nice, that, isn't it? A flaming and apocalyptic sunset.
That's nice.
Right. Well, Smith didn't bother subbing it to Weird Tales because he wrote to Lovecraft that... he wrote to August Derleth that Weird Tales might have taken the tale, but God knows when they would have printed it. It was at this point that Farnsworth Wright was ill, and there was a big backlog in things getting written and published. And for somebody who needs some income, it's a factor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what he did instead, he subbed it to Hugo Gernsback's Wonder Stories, a magazine that started in 1930 and ran until 1955, and was it was basically a merger of two magazines, Air Wonder Stories and Science Wonder Stories. And as Wonder Stories, it was a major competitor to Weird Tales. It was accepted straight off the bat and printed in the July 1931 issue. Now, it was so popular that a sequel, Beyond the Singing Flame, was commissioned. So that's one of the only times, other than, Volmar, that Smith's actually been commissioned. In 1935, the editor, Charles D. Hornig, included City of the Singing Flame as number 7 in a list of the 10 most popular stories ever printed in the magazine. Oh, wow. And that all came from, because obviously people would write in. So it's reader popularity. It's not just an arbitrary number. It's, certain people who want it. Smith was paid $52 for the story.
Oh, which, not bad.
Yeah, no, I was interested, right? So I went on saving.org, which is an inflation calculator, and $52 in 1931 is apparently worth $958.60 in 2023.
Oh, right.
I take that with a pinch of salt, right? But
it's a difficult thing to calculate exactly, but about $1,000. That's pretty good going for a short story. I mean, now you'd be surprised to get that much, wouldn't you? Really?
You're supposed to get a tenner.
And this story actually made the cover of Wonder Stories as well, with a very nice picture by Frank R. Paul of a person sort of leaping into this emerald green flame. For once, it actually captures the feel of the story quite nicely. Some of those covers didn't quite manage that, but
No.
I wonder if this contributed to the popularity as well.
Well, it is a very evocative image, isn't it? We'll get to it in the story. So it makes sense for the artist to sort of latch onto that image.
Yeah, and there are also some internal illustrations as well. I'll see if I can put links up to them. A very nice black and white illustration of him walking through the city with the alien creatures and the strange buildings.
Oh, nice.
It looks a little bit like a sort of New York skyscraper skyline in a way. But yeah, we'll get a link up to that as well.
Nice.
As you heard at the start of the show there, we begin with a foreword by the narrator, who is one Philip Hastane, whose name may sound familiar. In fact, this is one of the very few characters who recurs, I think, about 6 times. We've met him before in The Devotee of Evil.
Yes.
And we're going to be meeting him in a few other tales as well in the future. And this is the cipher for Smith himself, right? Yep. Philip Hastane, the weird fiction author and poet.
Definitely. That opening couple of paragraphs is basically autobiographical, isn't it?
Yes. And we get 2 other characters in this. Giles Angarth, who's another weird fiction author, and his friend Felix Ebony, who's an artist illustrator. I did wonder if Ebony was a reference to like Ibon, Book of Ibon kind of thing.
Possibly, yeah.
He does use quite strange names, isn't he? There's no John Smiths, is there, or
no
Fred McMurray or something.
Dave.
The surnames,
yeah,
the surnames are quite odd.
Yeah, I did wonder if Giles Angarth was a cipher for Lovecraft.
Yeah. And we learn that these 2 men have disappeared, but Angarth has left, specifically for Hastane, a small leather-bound notebook, and is written on the flyleaf, "Dear Hastane, you can publish this journal sometime if you like. People will think it's the last and wildest of all my fictions, unless they take it for one of your own. In either case, it would be just as well. Goodbye, faithfully, Giles Angarth." So what we then get is Hastane publishing the journal. And as he says, he's not quite sure himself as to whether the tale is truth or fabrication. And the only way to make sure will be go to the place where this incident happens to see if the same thing happens to him.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing there.
Yeah. So the first entry in the journal is dated July the 31st, 1930. And Angarth tells us, "I'd gone for a walk on Crater Ridge, which lies a mile or less to the north of my cabin near Summit. Though differing markedly in its character from the usual landscapes roundabout, it is one of my favourite places. It is exceptionally bare and desolate, with little more in the way of vegetation than mountain sunflowers, wild currant bushes, and a few sturdy wind-warped pines and supple tamaracks. Geologists deny it a volcanic origin, yet its outcroppings of rough nodular stone and enormous rubble heaps have all the air of scoriac remains, at least to my non-scientific eye. They look like the slag and refuse of Cyclopean furnaces." That's our first mention of Cyclopean.
Yep. And somewhere in Providence, Lovecraft punched the air.
So even though we're in California, we're quite close to Woburn, this already appears like an alien landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking that the way he describes it is very similar to like Abominations of Yondo and things like that, the desolation.
Now, we mentioned about the attention to detail here, and Smith knew this area very well. He'd actually walked along Crater Ridge in the late 1920s, and he wrote to a publication called Planets and Dimensions, "The ridge is a wild, eerie place, differing wholly in its geology and general aspect from the surrounding region, exactly as pictured in the story. It impressed my imagination profoundly, suggesting almost at first sight the contiguity of some unknown invisible world to which it might afford the mundane approach and entrance." So we've got the 2 influences there. We've got that strange rock, which was suggestive of something, but then the actual place itself provided a lot of the impulse for this story.
Yeah, it's nice when that sort of inspiration strikes.
Quite nicely, he puts in a mention of the Tarn as well. There is a little tarn lying on one end of the long dry ridge. There actually is, because I looked on Google Maps.
Oh, nice.
And this whole place is about 40 miles from Auburn, I think. So for those days, that would be a fair journey. I guess you drive up somewhere and then it's quite a long walk. But it's actually said at the start, isn't it? It's miles of rock-strewn desolation. So it's quite an inaccessible place.
Yeah, it sounds like breathtaking scenery, to be fair. It's in the next paragraph. He's talking about the titled battlements of Castle Peak, the rude masses of Donner Peak, with its dividing pass of hemlocks, the remote luminous blue of the Nevada mountains, and the soft green of willows in the valley at my feet. It was an aloof, silent world, and I heard no sound other than the dry, crackling noise of cicadas among the currant bushes. That's one of my favourite things, right, in the summer when you're out walking and you're like up in the hills and all you've got is the grasshoppers and crickets.
Yes, yeah, that's a very atmospheric sound, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he's wandering around looking for a rock he can pick up and take home, much like Clark Ashton Smith did himself. So another little autobiographical detail. When he comes across these two isolated boulders about 5 feet apart, and he gets a sense that these might have once been large columns. They're made of a strange greenish grey stone. They look a bit otherworldly to him.
Yeah, I got in mind a lot of weird fiction stories, especially the stuff of Lovecraft and The Circle, because it was described as smooth, soapy material. It's always the same, like Dagon and the Cthulhu statue.
The Cthulhu statue, isn't it? Yeah.
It's always
where that comes from. Soapy green. It's not like jade, is it?
No, well, it'd be soapstone, right? But I imagine. Yeah. But yeah, it instantly, it shouldn't be there, should it? Again, it's back to that thing. Yeah. It shouldn't be on Crater Rock.
Is that like and again, geography and geology, two of my worst subjects. Well, physics is my total worst, but anyway. Is that like a Pacific thing? Green soapstone? Is that related to Easter Island?
Yeah.
And we're on the Pacific coast here.
Yeah, I think it probably is. But again, I'm just as rubbish at them subjects as you are, so don't expect me to know.
Listeners, please help. Any geologists out there? Anyone who knows more than us about geology, which is 99% of the population.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Let us know.
I only just found out the name of the crust that forms on top of lava today, so that's how much I know about it.
Well, there we go. There we go. We learn something every day.
Indeed.
And another thing I got a feel of here, and it's going to crop up again later on, is Star Trek.
Which is interesting, because a lot of it was filmed out that way, wasn't it? In Vasquez Rocks and all that. That was near California.
Well, Vasquez Rocks is that very famous sort of 45-degree angle. It was the Gorn episode, wasn't it?
The Gorn, yes, it was the Gorn episode.
And you can actually go and visit that. I think, did you ever see that episode of Big Bang Theory where they visit? That was great.
I did, yeah. And the car got stolen. That was funny.
Yeah, so I guess that's not that far away. I think it's just north of LA. So it's a little further down south. But I don't know, it just conjured up that image for me, even though it's a different setup, right? This is more like a gateway, as we find. But then I thought that was quite a common device in Star Trek as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
They'd often jump through something to go back in time or to another planet.
Well, it also reminded me of Stargate.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, that was like in the, like a ruined thing out in the desert, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Out in the hills sort of thing,
So, what does he do? He does what any of us would do. He takes a step between the boulders. And I like this idea of nothing is more disconcerting than to miscalculate the degree of descent in taking a step. And we've all done that, right? You take a step and there's not one there, or you don't take a step and there is one there. We're back to that idea again.
So true.
Yeah. You get that sudden feeling of panic.
And then you do that thing, you break into a run. Why?
And
look around, you break into, I meant to do it, you break into a jog, don't you? One of those jaunty speed walking maneuvers,
Absolutely meant to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of these descriptions again of this travelling through the void, isn't it? That we've seen quite a few times.
Yeah.
Whether it's to Antares or whatever. this total feeling of dislocation, intense Hyperborean cold, sickness and vertigo. I like this little phrase, sickness and vertigo possess me, due no doubt to the profound disturbance of equilibrium.
Yes. That was a very Tweed thing to say, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. I liked it. I like the fact that, he was very confused and all the rest of it, and he got the feeling of doing a complete somersault before coming to land. And that just reminded me of all those old sci-fi movies or TV shows, because they always do that thing where the camera whirls around them, don't they?
Oh, Time Tunnel. That was that exact thing, wasn't it? They used to actually spin round.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I don't know how that was. Yeah, that was like a back projection. I don't know how they did that back then. But
it was probably back projection. Yeah.
But he gets a very soft landing. There's no real sensation of landing, though he still feels dizzy. And it takes him a little while to gather himself together, not only because of the dizziness, but also because of the sight that he sees, because it's not in California anymore.
Kansas.
And this is where we get Smith at his finest with, there's quite an extensive, really, this is a couple of pages of sort of description we get now of the landscape.
Yeah.
And some really lovely language in here. So right before him, he sees a long gradual slope covered with violet grass and studded at intervals with stones of monolithic size and shape ran undulantly away beneath me to a broad plain with sinuous open meadows and high stately forests of an unknown vegetation whose predominant hues were purple and yellow. The plain seemed to end in a wall of impenetrable golden brownish mist that rose with phantom pinnacles to dissolve on a sky of luminescent amber in which there was no sun. I mean, there's about 15 colours in there.
Yeah, I was just, that's poetry, right? That's you can tell he's a poet right there. And this is why I couldn't write a description like that,
So yeah, very vivid. And then we get in the foreground of this amazing scene, not more than 2 or 3 miles away, there loomed a city whose massive towers and mountainous ramparts of red stone were such as the Anakim of undiscovered worlds might build. Now, I'll mention this now because we get the word Anakim there. And later on, we find that the natives of the city are giants.
Yeah.
They're not specifically described as humans particularly, but there's a lot made of them being giants. So are the Anakim of Earth these aliens who travelled? They must have travelled to Earth to create this gateway.
Yeah, that's kind of the implication I got. You kind of got the implication of this place, whether it's a planet or a different dimension, because there's a lot of speculation on that, isn't there? That it could just be one of these places that exists sort of up against stars, and that's sort of like a liminal space, or it's a dimension, or they've travelled through space. But you get the point that it's a place of pilgrimage. So you wonder how many other gates there are around the universe or the multiverse, depending on what's the reality. God, this gives me a nosebleed. Metaphysics, woohoo!
Well, this is why I thought this particular setting or scenario would be a great gateway for some sort of RPG.
Yeah. Or a video game. Yeah.
You mix in, or you can play not just a human adventurer, but you could play one of these moth people or any of the various aliens that are described when he goes into the city. And do they come through that same gate, or you almost imagine this city has got these gates in a ring around it, perhaps?
That's kind of where I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, each one leads to a different planet or dimension or whatever.
So it's kind of like Stargate, really, if you think about it like that, because there's all these different gates to different worlds, isn't there, in the Stargate SG-1 TV series and all that?
Yeah. So I think for its time, this is a very imaginative approach.
Absolutely.
And as we know, Smith never was happy with just a conventional alien like a blue man with a sort of antenna sticking out of his head. We're full into insect people and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, yeah. We get some corkers later on, don't we?
And I think the interesting thing with our man Giles here is discombobulated, but we then get this. I'd read a number of trans-dimensional stories. In fact, I'd written one or two myself and had often pondered the possibility of other worlds or material planes which may coexist in the same space with ours. invisible and impalpable to human senses. Of course, I realised that once I'd fallen into some such dimension.
Nice.
Of course.
Well, that actually makes a change, because you usually get the arch rationalist, right, in a lot of these stories, who's just like, oh no, somebody slipped something into my drink. There's a rationalization. But it's nice to see
none of this is real, kind of thing.
Yeah. I've gone mad and I'm hallucinating. It's nice to actually see a protagonist in one of these weird fiction stories that actually goes, bugger, I'm on an alien planet.
And I think that's one of the strengths of the story, is that we see everything through this character's eyes, but we see a sort of range of emotions and reactions in him. It's not totally, it's not failed his sand roll, so he's not just a gibbering wreck. It's not trying to deny what's going on, as you just said. It's fairly matter of fact about it. And well, as we get into it, we'll see what happens to him. But I don't know, to me, his reaction seems very real in a lot of ways.
Yeah, very much so. But even more in the next couple of paragraphs, because after the wonder, he's suddenly got that panic.
Yeah.
And this is the very real thing of, like, I mean, again, back to my own experiences. I've gone out walking. We've gone, oh, let's go that way. You end out in the middle of nowhere. It starts getting dark. Your last train's in a couple of hours. How the hell am I going to get home?
Yeah.
Right. So that kicks in now.
And that's in the home counties, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So we get a fair bit of more description of the surroundings, and I like this idea that the place is surrounded by this golden brown mist. There's no sun, there's no shadow, and as he starts moving around this place, there's no insects, there's no animals, which again put me in mind of that Star Trek thing of the planet inside a planet kind of setup. This doesn't actually sound like a planet. It sounds like a place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like a pocket universe that you get in things like Doctor Who.
Yeah.
They skip a timeline and end up in like a pocket universe and sort of like e-space and that kind of thing. It's almost like that, isn't it? You get the impression that it is just like a holy place. It's almost like a heaven or a purgatory kind of setup.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, I think, especially with the clouds around it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and a nice little Stranglers reference there with the golden brown mist.
I clocked that as well.
Like some.
Yeah, got the harpsichord in my head now.
So then, as you say, he does start sort of freaking out a little bit, and he sort of says, well, even though the characters in my stories are bold and adventurous, I'm not. So I'm going to step back between the columns and see if I get back to California.
Yeah, and luckily, because I mean, the first time I read this, I was expecting him to be stuck there, right? I mean, because that's usually what happens in these kind of stories. But no, it works. Just, a complete reversal of what happened. And he gets straight back to Crater Ridge. And then, came back to the cabin like a man in a dream. Yeah, I can fully understand that.
Well, that's a good point as well, because in things like the door to Saturn, once you're through the door, that's it. There was no going back. They're living the rest of their life in Saturn.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing unspeakable things.
Yeah, yes, indeed. To unspeakable creatures.
Unspeakable creatures. So that takes us on to August the 2nd, the next entry in the journal. And he's trying to process all this information and he's trying to work it out. This is where the rational mind kicks in, right? He's trying to work out how can you move in a vacuum. The whole thing would baffle the comprehension of an Einstein, and I do not feel that I have even approached the true solution. Mm-hmm. But he's also got this temptation to go back, if only to convince myself that the thing really occurred. So he's kind of nervous but curious at the same time. But on August the 3rd, he writes, he does go back. This made me laugh. Armed with a revolver.
Yeah, I love that. It's so human, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, but it is, isn't it? It's that when it'd be British, it'd be carrying a big stick.
Oh, yes. Yeah, or he'd have his Webley, wouldn't he? If he was,
his trusty Webley revolver.
Helmet and a Webley.
Yeah, and a hip flask of brandy.
So the same thing happens. He goes through the series of spiral somersaults, some nice alliteration.
I like the fact that he cocked up this time, though. And because the first time he'd gone dead center and it all went really smooth. And this time he didn't. He sort of went off center and he ended up getting spun around and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting what this mechanic is, isn't it? It's almost like, I think like one of those like anti-grav tubes or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you go in the middle, you're all right. But if you get caught on the edge, you can imagine him screaming. Oh!
I've got the image again with the like the back projection whirling around him really quickly and his hair all dishevelled. A razor head hair. Going, oh!
Razor head. There's a film.
Oh God, yeah.
All the loose change falling out of his pocket.
All the bullets from his gun. There you go. All his spare ammo.
So he finds himself back on the violet grass, and this time he thinks he's going to move towards the buildings, the Cyclopean buildings. And he doesn't go very far, and he finds a road in the forest, a road paved with stupendous blocks of stone, at least 20 feet square. So we're setting up for our giants. And he starts walking on this until he hears a noise behind him, and he turns and he sees the approach of several singular entities. Mm-hmm. This section here, because he basically hides in the bushes, reminded me of Shadow over Innsmouth.
Very much so, yeah. I love this line, though, as well. Terrified, I sprang back and hid myself in a thicket. It just made me laugh for some reason. Yeah, just imagine him poking, like pulling the bush apart and peering through the bush. It's like that gif, that creepy guy looking over the shrubbery into somebody's garden.
Yes, the darkest of the hillside thickets, no doubt.
Indeed, yes.
And then we get the description of these alien creatures. And again, this is, as we said, this is not just your conventional, three-armed man or something. They must have been 10 feet tall, and they were moving along with colossal strides that took them from sight in a few instants. Their bodies were bright and shining, as if encased in some sort of armour, and their heads were equipped with high curving appendages of opalescent hues, which nodded above them like fantastic plumes, but may have been antennae or other sense organs of a novel type.
Yeah, you can just picture that, can't you? Yeah, very alien.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression of big sort of praying mantis type things or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And similar to some of his other aliens, isn't it? That idea of having the carapace, the shiny, bright carapace outside.
Yeah. Yeah, the way with the strides, I think a praying mantis is probably a very good description because of the way they move. And you can almost see them with their arms out in front of them in that sort of position, can't you?
I'm convinced they're alien creatures anyway. I don't think they're from Earth.
Oh, yeah. They look like aliens. Yeah. Well, it's like the mantis shrimp. Have you seen one of them?
No.
They're brilliant. Yeah, mantis shrimps. They're great.
I should look that up.
Yeah.
There's another reason not to go in the sea. Lovecraft was right, Now, this is where we get a second thing that put me in mind of Star Trek, because he talks about this faint sound, this faint hum that sort of ripples through his nervous system. And it's more like a vibration than a sound initially, though it does grow into a sound. And what this reminded me of with Star Trek was, I can see if I can put it in here, everyone will know what it is. When they beam down to a planet, there's like a sort of red sky and they're in a studio of rocks and whatever. But there's a sort of hum or tinkle in the background. There's like a slight noise that's very atmospheric. And I was wondering if Star Trek was the first show to use that kind of thing. So I remember watching Lost in Space as a kid, and there'd be music, of course, but not that same sort of, what they call it, like a Foley sound.
I would say, to my knowledge, one of the first times would be William Hartnell era Doctor Who. Specifically the serial The Web Planet, which is one of the Lovecraftian ones. It's basically a planet inhabited by giant bugs, right? And it's really, really strange. It's like the cameras have all got Vaseline on the lenses, so it's all really weird. But all the way through it, there's almost like a singing. It's almost like a theremin, but not. And it's kind of like in the background all the way through it, and it just gives it this sort of dreamlike quality.
Yeah.
So that's what I had in my head.
Interesting. But it definitely, well, I suppose it's that thing of hitting all the senses, isn't it now?
Yeah. I thought when you said Star Trek, you were going to say the theremin, because I'm hearing theremin now reading this.
And this develops into music. The melody was piercingly sweet and resembled at times the singing of some voluptuous feminine voice. However, no human voice could have possessed the unearthly pitch, the shrill, perpetually sustained notes that somehow suggested the light of remote worlds and stars translated into sound. So to me, that's an echo there of Azathoth's flute players.
Yeah. Well, the music of Eric Zahn, even.
Yeah, it's always high-pitched, sort of pipey, fluty stuff, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I wonder how much of that was inspired by the oud, the Egyptian.
Oh yeah.
Because that gets some really strange notes, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then that ties in with your sort of feeling of Nyarlathotep.
Exactly. Yeah.
That what do they call it? Is Oriental mysticism at the time, isn't it? The sort of stereotype.
Yeah.
If it's from the Orient, it has to be mysterious or occult in some way.
Indeed.
And this draws him in. He calls it like a siren-like allurement.
Yeah, I thought that was a really, really cool sort of metaphor there, the siren thing. Because again, it's like whenever you get mermaids and things like that in movies, it's always that very high-pitched kind of thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, that would allure me. I have to say what you just did there. And this draws him to the city. And he gets to the gates. It's a huge place. I was near the great road, which entered an open gate large enough to admit the passage of behemoths. There's a word I miss, behemoths. That's a good word. And indeed, is that a little pun, do you think? Because behemoth is obviously a type of giant, but then we get the giant moth thing as well later on.
Nice. Yeah.
There's no guards in sight, and several of those entities he's already seen are sort of marching in there. And he feels this pull, but he resists it, and he runs back to the gate and returns to Earth again. So that brings us into the entry for August the 5th, where he tells us he has returned, and he's taken some cotton wool to put in his ears. I thought it was a lovely touch.
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant touch. Again, it's that a very human sort of response to something alien, isn't it? I know, I'll stuff my ears with cotton wool.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's got his revolver.
Yeah. And he's got his revolver, his cotton wool. You can just see it in big clumps, can't you, poking out his head.
And this time he actually goes into the city itself. And this is where he meets what he assumes as the natives of the place, because all these other aliens that he's seen and that he sees now all are heading for the centre of the city or the source of the music. And the locals they're not sort of shepherding him or anything, but they're sort of standing back as all these things go by, is the impression I get.
Mm. Yeah, they're almost like stewards at gigs. They stand there in the high vis next to the barriers and just sort of stand there and watch you as you walk past,
And this is where we get their description. The real people are giants too, but they move slowly with solemn hieratic paces. Their bodies are nude and swart, and their limbs are those of carotides, massive enough, it would seem, to uphold the roofs and lintels of their own buildings. I fear to describe them minutely, for human words will give the idea of something monstrous and uncouth, and these beings are not monstrous, they have merely developed in obedience to the laws of another evolution than ours. So I thought there was a couple of nice things in there. One is nude and swart, which I think is a great name for a solicitors.
Nice. Yeah. Monstrous and uncouth. That's a great name for a punk band.
That's a duo, isn't it?
Yeah. Monstrous and uncouth, a punk duo. Yeah.
And I like this idea because it's a pleasant change of normally when things look monstrous and uncouth, they're idiots, right? They're just so-called savages or whatever. Here he says, well, they look like this because they've developed in a totally different place. So why would they look what we would call attractive or beautiful or anything?
Yeah, that struck me as really sort of forward thinking.
Yeah, it's mature, isn't it? It's quite mature.
It is, yeah. It's weird. I like this character. because so often they're a bit of a douche, right? So you're quite happy that they get their comeuppance kind of thing, But this guy seems like quite a nice chap.
Yeah.
So
he's drawn deeper into the city, and this is where we see a lot of the other type of beings as well. Then overhead, two creatures with long, translucent, blood-coloured wings, intricately veined and ribbed, came flying side by side and vanished behind the others. Their faces, featured with organs of unsurmisable use, were not those of animals, and I felt sure that they were beings of a high order of development. So basically, it sounds like a sort of stream of creatures. It's quite a crowd. Like you said, it's like people walking to a gig, or there's literally thousands of people all coming out of the station, and everyone's walking down to this place. It has that sort of feel about it.
Yeah, it does. It's or a funeral procession was the other thing I got. And again, with the stewards kind of line in it, it's like when Brighton play here, they have the barriers and they sort of, make them do a zigzag around the station, the queuing system kind of thing. That's what it reminded me of,
And with that music going, that's quite a good analogy as well. But he actually feels this, doesn't he? When you're in that position and there's a crowd of people going to something, that the pace sort of picks up a little bit as you get nearer. There's that sort of buzz in the air.
Yeah.
I felt the thrill of one who approaches the sanctum of some hierarchical mystery when I entered the halls of that building. So this is now a sort of temple-like building at the centre of the city. And it's been walking for miles, right? This isn't like 5 minutes from the gate. So this is an absolutely huge city. It's all on a huge scale.
Yeah. Ceaseless gloom of those rectangular structures that hung above me, tier on tier, at an awful height in the amber zenith. Yeah. Again, very visual.
And no one speaks to him. Everything ignores him. And he sort of works out, I think. And again, this is something that's nice about this character. Well, he looks just as odd as all the other things. None of them are from that place, apart from the giants. So looking like he does is not out of place here. It's very accepting.
Yeah. I've just worked out, talking about this, I've just worked out what it reminds me of. The London Underground. Doesn't it? You're walking in this sort of ceaseless procession, and you're all weirdos together. You're all stuck in this place. Nobody talks to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
That's the worst thing.
There's disinterested attendants sort of standing around looking bored.
And you got a weird piping coming over the tannoy system.
Yeah, or from down the weird busker down. That's always there.
Have you ever had that though? Sometimes I've been in the underground tunnels, like maybe late at night or something like that, and you get that music coming through.
Yeah,
I remember that experience. I think there's a guy playing a saxophone, so we're in the Black Man with the Horn kind of territory,
Yeah,
and the echo of it, and then the distant rattle of the trains. It's quite a creepy experience.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. It was a guy with a harmonica. Yeah, that was weird because, again, to begin with, you only got the high notes.
Oh,
so it was slightly uncanny valley again. It was and this was like late night, so there was like me in there. Drunken me stumbling from a gig in Camden to get the last train back down to Brighton, right?
Anything like that is always worse if you've seen the film Deathline. Right?
Oh, isn't it? Yeah.
We must cover that sometime on the Innsworth Book Club.
That's a great film. Yeah.
Now, this is where his the high tech clicks in, right? And he puts the cotton wool in his ears. He has a sort of feeling that maybe these giants don't have his best interests at heart.
Yeah, I love this line here. I do not know what obscure warning prompted me now to stuff my ears with cotton ere I went any further. Though I could still hear it, still feel its peculiar penetrant vibration, the sound became muted when I'd done this, and its influence was less powerful henceforward. So it is a siren song.
And it's quite interesting that we can travel through interdimensional space and we can speculate about the power of this thing. Was it calling him even when he was back in California? But was it so faint that he couldn't hear it? But I love that its effect can be nullified by going down to Boots and buying a bag of cotton wool balls.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. I fully expect, if there is an afterlife or something, it'll all be held together with gaffer tape.
So this is where we get to see the singing flame itself, and again, another very evocative description. The hall ended in a chamber of immense indefinite scope, whose walls and roof were doubtful with unremoving shadows. In the centre, amid the pavement of mammoth blocks, there was a circular pit above which seemed to float a fountain of flame that soared in one perpetual, slowly lengthening jet. This flame was the sole illumination, and also it was the source of the wild, unearthly music. Even with my purposefully deafened ears, I was wooed by the shrill and starry sweetness of its singing, and I felt the voluptuous lure and the high vertiginous exaltation. Lovely.
Vertiginous exaltation. There's a goth band.
Oh, that is, and I like voluptuous lure as well. That'd be the singer's name, I thought. And he gets a distinct impression this place is a shrine. I think, as you said before, this is like a place of pilgrimage or of some sort of worship.
Yeah,
but on a cosmic level. So we get that hint of the cosmic in here as well. It's not just like we go to Venus kind of story, is it?
Oh no, I would definitely put this in the sort of the cosmic bracket, definitely, because while there's a purpose to this flame, right? But we don't know what it is. Is there something behind it? Is there some immense creature out there somewhere that controls this flame? It's left to your imagination, like all good weird tales,
Yeah. That idea of the pilgrimage or the shrine is continued because these various creatures or beings, they bow their exotic heads, or they make mysterious gestures or adoration with unhuman hands and members, and the voices of several, deep as booming drums or sharp as the stridulation of giant insects, were audible amid the singing of the fountain. It's got a lot of S sounds in this: sharp, stridulation, shrill, and starry sweetness of the singing. That's a nice little touch as well. Again, that speaks to the poet, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And despite the cotton wool, he feels impelled to draw closer. And he describes the fire as being white and dazzling, pure as the central flame of a star. It feels a stimulating warmth that filled my very marrow with intenser life.
Yeah, I liked that.
Yeah, it's not just a sound thing. There's the sight of it as well. And again, it's, I think as you mentioned before, that music was sort of rippling through his nervous system.
Yeah.
It's a total sensory experience.
Yeah. Again, it reminds me of, when you go to a gig and you stand next to the bass bin and you can feel it like going all the way through you. And then the bass player hits that note and you need to rush to the lavatory,
The brown note.
The brown note. Yeah.
And then we get the bizarre event of these worshipping entities and beings start walking into the flame. And we even get the description: the two entities with scarlet wings rose and flew toward the flame like moths toward a candle. For a brief moment, the light shone redly through their half-transparent vans ere they disappeared in the leaping incandescence, which flared briefly and then burned as before.
Yeah, now there's something I picked up on this that I wanted to just talk about here, because he said, a sudden start of terror, like one who has been tempted to fling himself from a high precipice, I drew back. Now, that's actually Freud talks about that, the death drive. It's that urge, you've got a knife, that urge to stick it in your hand, or when you're standing on the edge, that really strange, I could just throw myself off here. And basically, he named it after the Greek god Thanatos, who was the god of death.
Right.
Because according to Sigmund Freud, humans have a life instinct, which he named Eros, and the death drive, which he named Thanatos. Basically, he compels humans to engage in risky and self-destructive acts that could lead to their own death. It's basically in his book, Beyond the Pleasure Principle.
That is certainly a thing, right? Because we've all stood on the balcony or on the edge of a cliff, and it's almost a pull, isn't it? Or certainly back in younger days, whether it's on a motorbike or in a car, I'm going to see if I can get up to 120.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's that feeling of living on the edge of life and death.
Yeah.
you're on that sort of precipice. It puts me in mind of people like Jim Morrison who just climb up buildings and walk along window ledges and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's like these parkour enthusiasts, right? That just the free climbers and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what Freud called basically Thanatos, the death drive.
That's interesting, because that would have been about the same time as this, I guess, right? When Freud was developing all those ideas. So is this flame something that takes that, which presumably is present in all these other sentient beings, sort of takes it and amplifies it? Or is it a case of it's like a mind control? It effectively turns people into some sort of zombie and you just pulled in?
Yeah.
I wonder, again, we have no idea.
Yeah. Is it a feeding mechanism?
Is it feeding? Yeah.
Is it a feeding mechanism? Is it taking people's life essence?
Yeah.
We don't know, and that's the beauty of it.
Is this what keeps this whole thing running, this whole setup? Because, as he says, the local giants, again, they're just like the stewards. They just stand back and, yep, just that way, sir. Off you go.
Yeah.
A little bit like the suicide machines in The King in Yellow, right?
Indeed. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I like the fact now that the flame, after it's a load of people, a load of creatures have jumped into it, it sort of subsides, and a couple next to it, a guy next to him, well, an alien next to him, turns and basically jabbers at him in some unknown language, but he gets the impression that the guy's saying, dude, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah. This is the only communication, right? Through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that interspecies communication where you haven't got a clue what is being said, but he gets a sense of the meaning, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
There was one other thing here as well that I found quite sort of touching in a way, or quite sad, was there were winged colossi and titans who strode as with 7-league boots, and there was one being with useless abortive wings who crawled rather than ran to seek the same glorious doom as the rest. I found that quite poignant. This thing can't fly; its wings are damaged almost, but it crawls. That's
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
that sort of puts me in mind of sort of religious sites like Lourdes.
Well, I was going to say it's like Lourdes, like some biblical thing. It's almost like the promise of rebirth, isn't it? It's phoenix-like kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think, as you say, the flame starts to die down. It's had its fill, and the chappie next to him says, "Let's scarper." In so many words. And he manages to tear himself away and get back home. August the 9th. Well, we can imagine his mental state now, because having had this extremely strange and in some ways wonderful experience, the normal world is just flat and mundane and puerile.
Yeah, it's like the holiday blues to the nth degree, isn't it? You've been to some amazing place and seen these amazing things, and then you're back in Bridlington,
You're back in your cubicle.
Yeah, that's it. You're back in your cubicle in Bridlington, It's, no disrespect to people who live in Bridlington. I imagine it's an incredibly stimulating part of the world.
Or who work in cubicles, because,
yeah.
We've all got to make a living.
Exactly, but you know what I mean.
Just don't keep phoning me with your offers of insurance.
PPI. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I will just add here, and I'll see if I can find the link. It was posted on Facebook. Ramsey Campbell recorded himself having a conversation with one of these cold call, what they got, telemarketers, I call them.
So funny.
And one of the funniest things, the person was going, "You're Randy Campbell." Randy Candle? Who's Randy Candle?
Randy Candle.
10 minutes. 10 minutes. He kept that up. Yeah, I should put that up. That's hilarious.
The other thing I picked up on was that he started talking about a character from one of his stories of was it Frank? It was either Thaddeus Nash or the Franklin paragraphs.
Brilliant.
It's one of his characters from his mythos.
That's a real writer who can just improvise off the cuff like that.
Yeah.
So, of course, Giles is planning to go back, but he thinks he doesn't want to go back on his own. He wants to share this experience with someone. I wonder if part of that is, in a way, just to make sure that it is really happening to him. If the other person sees this as well, then, yeah, it really is real. Because there must be some part of you thinking, am I having some sort of episode here? It's so surreal when out there, unless you're on mushrooms or something, maybe.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the mention of Philip Hastain, but he'll probably be far too busy. But there is the Californian artist Felix Ebenly, who has illustrated some of my fantastic novels. And Ebenly is just the sort of chap who would appreciate this type of adventure. So he writes to Felix, who lives in San Francisco. August the 12th, Ebenly turns up. He's told him exactly what is going on, and Ebenly is naturally a little sceptical about this. But they're going to go and visit tomorrow, August the 13th. And this is where he wraps the journal up and addresses it to Hastain because he's not sure if he's going to come back or what's going to happen. And I like that Angarth says about, you've got to cover your ears because this is a siren, it's a lure. And Felix is like, no, if I'm going to experience it, I want to experience it full on.
Yeah, you just know what's going to happen. It's, it's one of those things, isn't it?
Mm.
Again, it makes you wonder whether he's already heard the call,
Oh, yes, that's a good point. Yeah. And is he, as an artist of the weird and outre, is he more attuned to hearing that call?
Yeah, this is it. Is he more in tuned with his death drive, with the,
So they're back in the city again, and Felix is in a veritable rhapsody of artistic delight when he held the enormous buildings and the people. And the music definitely takes a hold of him. And this is where we get Larry, the Lepidopter. Because obviously there's all these creatures there, but there's ones he hasn't seen before or he didn't see last time. Among those that were new to me, I recall one gorgeous creature with golden and cerulean wings like those of a giant lepidopter and scintillating jewel-like eyes that must have been designed to mirror the glories of some Edenic world. That's very nice. That put me in mind of Doctor Who as well. I'm sure it was in early William Hartnell that had kind of Mothmen in it.
That was the same one.
Oh, it's that one.
That's the Web Planet.
Ah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
I remember that as a kid. Yeah,
that's the one that basically the world has been infected by this force, this eldritch monstrosity, for want of a better term, known as the Animus, but by the natives. But in later novelizations and things, it is said that that's the Lolgir.
Ah, right.
See.
I get it.
Yeah.
So again, we get very evocative description of what's going on. It's the same scene as before. There are different beings and entities in there. And Ebenly is really getting into this, right? Despite the warnings of his friends, he's deaf as a machine and wholly impervious to anything but the lethal music. His expression and movements were those of a somnambulist. So that does imply that there's this sort of taking over of the mind. You're drawn like a sleepwalker.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Again, I can't remember what it was from. Well, it's almost like the Piper of Hamelin, isn't it?
Yeah.
The kids drawn out in the night by the music.
Oh, of course.
Sleepwalking off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's like a couple of human myths mixed in there, aren't there? There were sirens and mermaids and then the Piper. Yeah, I thought of that.
Mm.
Anyway, Giles has got his ear defenders in, his cotton wool, but Ebenly hasn't. He ran forward in a series of leaps that were both solemn and frenzied, like the beginning of some sacerdotal dance, and hurled himself headlong into the flame. The fire enveloped him. It flared up for an instant with a more dazzling whiteness, and that was all. Bye-bye, Felix.
Yeah. This is where he fails his San roll. And he freaks out really as other creatures start doing the same thing, and he flees.
But then a strange thing happens, because that the further away he gets from the shrine, the horror diminishes, but the more I found myself envying my companion's fate and wondering as the sensations he had felt in that moment of fiery dissolution. So he comes back again to the cabin, and this is where he writes the final entry in the journal. And it's literature is nothing more than the shadow of a shadow, and life with its drawn-out length of monotonous, reiterative days is unreal without meaning now, in comparison with the splendid death which I might have had. There seems to be no reason at all why I should fight it. Tomorrow I shall return to the city. So even though it's escaped, it's still got him.
Yeah.
Which is, again, amplifying that death drive in him somehow.
Yeah.
Not just a death, but a glorious death as well.
Indeed, yeah. The glorious doom,
Yeah.
it says there,
Yeah.
which sounds like the name of a Doctor Who serial. But it
Like
is
a breakfast cereal.
Glorious doom.
Breakfast cereal.
Yeah, with a bit of milk. Yeah. Yeah, but again, yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? It's the death drive. I was just looking, and yeah, Beyond the Pleasure Principle was written in 1920. So I do wonder if Smith had read it or had heard about it, or
Yeah, it would have been well circulated by this time, wouldn't it? And
yeah,
I imagine much as Einstein was, Freud was making huge waves in terms of psychology or medical theory.
yeah, yeah. So I do wonder, because that really is. It's almost like if he'd have said at the end, because you've got the allusions to Greek statues and things as well, haven't you? Like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, that flame, Thanatos, the god of death.
Yeah, yeah. And then I can think of other things like Rider Haggard. Wasn't there, or was that the flame of eternal youth in that? Was that kind of a reverse? I think, does she bathe in the flame? It's been a long time since I read that or saw the film.
Yes, yeah, it is youth, because a Doctor Who pastiched that in the brain of Morbius. You had the Sisters of the Flame, and the flame created an elixir that gave them eternal life.
So perhaps it's a reversal of that. There's the flame that gives and the flame that takes. And we can only speculate as to how much. We know there's a certain amount of biographical material in this, at least, in the place. But how much this reflects... Well, Smith often uses these themes of loss, of finding something, but then you can't get back to it. Although in this case, finding it and going back to it means your own destruction. But it's almost like, what a way to go,
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And it's that kind of, that artistic thing, the self-destructive, I'm going to, take all these drugs so I can see beyond the veil and all that kind of, you know what I mean? It's that that creative drive to see more. So, and that's the thing right at the end, isn't it? He wants to know what he felt when he got immolated.
Yeah, not what happens so much.
No.
Because you presume they're immolated. Perhaps they're taken to an even higher plane or something. But it's not curious about what happens beyond that.
No, it's the sensation.
But just about the sensation.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Isn't it?
I never thought of that. Yeah. Who was it who said the road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom?
Oh,
that was one of the romantics, wasn't it?
It was William Blake.
Ah,
yeah, it's a proverb by William Blake.
Right. Something that was enthusiastically taken up by, we mentioned him earlier, people like Jim Morrison.
Yes.
And a lot of that whole 60s counterculture.
Oh, yeah. Sid Barrett, a lot of them. Yeah.
So, City of the Singing Flame, one of Smith's better stories. I really enjoyed that one. It's a
belter, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, plot-wise, it's quite simple and straightforward, but it's the power of the language again in that, I think.
Yeah. Again, I remember the first time I read it, because I read in bed before I go to sleep, and I read it before I went to sleep, and I dreamt about this procession of weird creatures.
Oh, nice.
It's one of those, it just stuck in my head, and even now, if I think about it, I picture the moth people and all this kind of stuff.
It is very visual. Yeah. One other thought I had on that as well, because when I was looking through the letters, this was something that cropped up, and I know we've touched on this before, was it with the 13th Ghost, I think, was the forest fires happening in that area at the time, and are still happening today, and about how fire was a very real and present danger for people living in those, especially the rural areas. So there's that connection again between the flame coming and just destroying everything. Although in this, you're actively going into the fire. There's a little Deep Purple reference for any fans.
Yes, indeed.
that was totally unintentional. So yeah, I wonder if there's that idea of the cleansing flame as well, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our second story for today. This one is very short, literally only a few pages long, and it's titled "A Good Embalmer," So that gives us some idea of what to expect.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And we've gone from one that's sort of full of, deep thought and all the rest of it. This is basically a sort of, it's comedic, isn't it? It's quite a funny story. I chuckled reading it.
Yeah, it really put me in mind of Comedy of Terrors, Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, that kind of thing. It's very much that atmosphere.
Yeah, it's almost Carry On, isn't it? It's some of the
Carry On embalming.
Carry On embalming. Well, he will carry on screaming. There you go. Frying tonight.
Right.
Yeah, well, Clark Ashton Smith wrote this in 3 days, ending on February the 7th, 1931. And it's one that Smith was actually quite dismissive of, saying to August Derleth that it may not even have the dubious merit of being saleable. And part of the problem was that he knew next to nothing about the subject. So we've all been there, right? Writing about things you have no idea about. Yeah.
To be fair, that's not a real sort of general knowledge subject, is it? Embalming. No, it's quite specific.
Yeah. Derleth replied that the plot is okay. I don't think you were feeling particularly good when you wrote it, and it seems a bit disconnected. It's the kind of story Wright might take in a pinch, but a reader would forget in the moment he'd read the last word. Of course, it does not at all compare with anything else of yours or that you've written recently. I kind of disagree, because I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good, and I'm going to remember it because,
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. It's one of those Poe-esque or
it's almost like a conte cruel, isn't it? It's
your Tales from the Crypt. It's meant to be one of those things. So it's not going to be filled with the same sort of language as City of the Singing Flame.
No,
but it works, and it works very effectively.
Yeah. Well, it didn't get in Weird Tales, but he almost managed to sell it to Strange Tales. But the editor, Harry Bates, replied, "I liked it myself, and I would have bought it, but Mr. Clayton thought we'd better not. And I did not support it very strongly, for I just as leave have something of greater length to represent you next time." So it was kind of, I don't know why Clayton didn't want it, but
perhaps the nature of the material was a little bit outrageous for the day.
Very possibly, because I did wonder. Yeah, I did wonder, because it is a bit gruesome. It's not gruesome, is it? It's ghoulish, I think is the word.
Yeah, and it's vivid in its description, isn't it? It's we see everything that's going on pretty much.
Well, it remained unpublished until 1989, when it was included in Steve Barron's book Strange Shadows. I've heard that name before. The uncollected fiction and essays of Clark Ashton Smith. He did almost get it in print in the Fantasy Fan, which is the fanzine. It was actually it was announced as being printed. There was an announcement for a story called The Embalmers of Ramsville by Michael Weir. Now, Michael Weir is almost certainly a pseudonym of Smith's, apparently, probably derived from Poe's poem Ullalum. So, but for whatever reason, it never did actually get printed.
Interesting. So, under a pseudonym or a pen name. That seems a strange thing to me, because unless Smith wanted to disassociate himself from it, why would that occur? Other than you would have thought the editors would have wanted his name on the cover or whatever, because he was quite well known by then.
Yeah,
that seems a strange thing. Has anyone got any further information on that? Might be interesting to know.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything myself, but yeah, it's very strange.
So our scene opens, and again, I think in a comedy of terrors, you can imagine them. They're in the funeral parlour arguing. This pair of characters, Jonas Turple and Caleb Udley, joint owners of the sole undertaking establishment in Ramsville, and they're bickering.
Yeah, you couldn't embalm a salted herring, said Tupple. I love that. It's Pete and Dud, isn't it?
It is. This is your classic bickering couple, isn't it? Laurel and Hardy, or
it's almost like
thing.
Hancock and Sid James, it's anything like that. Yeah.
And I really like this. Look at the job you did on old Aaron Webley 5 years ago when I was away at the Embalmers Convention. Well, the idea of an Embalmers Convention, I think, is wonderful.
That's tremendous, isn't it? Yeah.
Of course, no one would have been the wiser if the family hadn't decided to transfer him to their home lot in Georgetown 10 months after. The condition of the corpse wasn't much of an advertisement for us.
This is why I really enjoyed this story, because I am just picturing this in that old black and white comedy.
They're wearing like top hats, aren't they? They've got their funeral gear on. That sort of image,
So the two Ronnies, the two Ronnies could have done a brilliant version of this, right?
And this is where it gets very technical, because they're talking about Peruvian bark, camphor, cinnamon, aromatics, sulfate of zinc. And Caleb says, well, sulfate of zinc is good enough for me. And then we get what sets up the kind of punchline of the story. Well, you never shoot any of it into me, said Turple. You'd make a mess of it anyway. I'd certainly hate to be at your mercy and have you try to embalm me if I were dead. So there's our pretty big foreshadowing.
I love this. I love what he shoots back with here. Even at that, there are times when I wouldn't mind having the chance. And like he says, the hell you say, look here, Caleb, if I should die before you do and you start blundering operations on me, I will simply rise from the dead. But the dead don't rise, says Udley, who was not only something of a Sadducean, but was also rather literal-minded.
So, yes, that sets the whole thing up nicely for what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're also introduced then to the third person in the story, one Thomas Agdal, who sounds like is the junior, basically the trainee, who gets caught in this constant bickering between the two older men.
Yeah, he's described as comparatively inexperienced, but was also mild-tempered. And you get the impression he's the poor put-upon sod that actually does all the work. There's always that situation in there in these kind of things.
And this is where that earlier mention of Turple being rubicund and etc. plays out, because he'd long shown an apoplectic tendency, but nevertheless had not expected a so sudden and early demise, and he was found dead one morning in the local hotel room which he had occupied for more than 20 years. His partner, as was natural, was deeply shocked and surprised by the news, but since he had omitted to leave any instructions to the contrary, they proceeded to take charge of his body with all due expedition. So Turple ends up in exactly the position he didn't want to be. There he is, stretched out on the slab with Udley standing over him. And the scene is further set by the weather, right? It's a March afternoon, but it's murky and foggy, and the lights have been turned on in the rear room of the undertaking parlour, where Udley and Agdal were about to begin their gruesome task. They gave a semi-nocturnal touch to the macabre scene. So it's those flickering gas lamps in it and all that sort of stuff.
It's brilliant. It's incredibly it does evoke them sort of Victorian gaslight tales, doesn't it? It's almost Dickensian, even though it's like a completely different part of the world.
Yeah. Or you think back to Poe, which I guess was the same sort of time as Dickens, wasn't it? It was very much that same era. Yeah,
things start going really strange now, because as he approached the pursy and somewhat abdominous corpse and was about to begin the preliminary incisions, these, however, were not made, at least not by Caleb Udley, for even as he stopped above it, the cadaver stirred. Its eyelids fluttered and opened, and that which had been earthly shell of Jonas Turple sat up suddenly and heavily on the cold slab.
Now, naturally, Udley leaps back, and Agdal is out the door, right? He's not hanging around for this. What did I tell you, Caleb? Udley was aware that the cadaver had spoken. Its voice seemed to issue from a deep vault and was hideously muffled, as if it had made its way through some intervening medium of a viscous or semi-liquescent nature.
Yeah.
And basically, Udley here, his heart gives out on him. The shock is so great. That's his lot. He pops his clogs there and then.
Yep.
Agdal returns a couple of hours later. He's mastered his terrors, and he's told a few of the townspeople what happened. The doctor who signed the death certificate doesn't really believe it at all, so he's going to come along to check things out. And the situation is made even more mysterious because Turple is lying in the very same place and position on the slab, dead as a door now, no sign of life at all. But Udley has disappeared.
Yeah. And it was Agdale who made the singular discovery that the new casket which had been provided for Turple's reception was now occupied, and that the occupant was Caleb Udley. But it remained for Dr. Martin in his official capacity as coroner to make a discovery that was even more singular, if possible. The corpse of Udley had been fully and efficiently embalmed, and the chief agent employed was corrosive sublimate. The body of Turple, however, was still in need of this service.
Nice.
Love it.
There we go. So, yeah, real classic Tales from the Crypt type post stuff there. I think it's...
Yeah.
And, you know, what does an editor want from a 4-page story? I mean, that's all packed in there.
I really enjoyed it. I thought, again, it's one of those that I wish had been made into an episode of Night Gallery or Tales from the Crypt or one of them anthology shows, man. I mean, because that'd be fine for a half-hour episode, yeah. You know,
and it's so Vincent Price, isn't it, that one?
Isn't it?
It's just,
isn't it?
You know, you can just picture it, can't you?
Well, Turple has got to be Vincent Price, right?
Yeah.
What did I tell you, Caleb? You can just hear it in his voice, you know.
And Peter Lorre, because I mean, he had that sort of look about him as well. You know, talk about rubicund.
Rubicund, yeah.
So there we are. Those are our 2 stories for this episode. Quite a contrast in a way, both in terms of length and setting, but well, in some ways, both involving the same subject, the inevitable. Yeah.
I enjoyed them both tremendously. It's strange because A Good Embalmer, like you say, it's 4 pages long. There's not a lot there, but for some reason, I just really liked it. And I think it is because I'm sort of filtering it through that lens of, you know, sitcom kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a black comedy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it works very well. And as I say, I don't know why any editor would turn that down. But especially, you know, you've got just a couple of pages to fill or something. Yeah. It's a lovely little space filler as well. But as we said, we have the advantage of hindsight and, you know, we'd publish Clark Ashton Smith's shopping list. You know? So if we turn to the letters now, Dawnwood Spire, Lonely Hill, there's not a lot on either of these stories, but we do get 1 or 2 interesting nuggets. So we have Smith writing to Lovecraft. This is the 27th of January 1931, and quite appropriately, the return address is at the apex of the singing flame in the Titan city beyond the transdimensional columns.
Nice.
So I just love the way these guys use their stuff in everything they write.
Yeah.
Dear H. Pyel, I am enclosing a new transdimensional story, The City of the Singing Flame, in which I have utilized Crater Ridge, the place where I found the inaudible icon. So as we've said before. Now, the interesting thing with this is he goes on, I've idled for a few days, but won't be able to keep it up much longer. As to my appalling prolificality, there are doubtless several reasons and explanations. About 18 months ago, I was taken to task for idleness by a woman friend and pledged myself to industry. So the woman friend, as we know, was his companion, Mrs. Sully, who said to him, basically, pull your finger out, start writing, earning some money. And that actually took place on Crater Ridge. That's where they had that conversation.
Oh, nice.
So that closes that circle quite nicely, doesn't it?
That's really cool. Yeah. I found a really interesting snippet in the letters of August Derleth and Clark Ashton Smith, Eccentric Impractical Devils, which I still think is a great title for a book. We actually get the introduction to a junior member of the Lovecraft Circle in relation to the City of the Singing Flame, which I thought was really interesting little nugget. So I'm just going to read that for you now. In a letter dated June the 30th, 1931. I've just had a long letter from a boy in Pittsburgh, a fantastic fiction fan who asks about 1 million questions. I'll have to take a day off to answer them all. He compares The City of the Singing Flame to the renowned A. Merritt, whom I've never read apart from one or two installments of The Snake Mother in Argosy. In fact, my general reading of science fiction, and even of weird fiction, has been rather limited. It's only within the last year or two that I have purchased magazines of this type with any frequency or regularity. But this kid, Vernon Shea, seems to have read everything of the sort ever published.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so that is Mr. J. Vernon Shea.
It must have been quite young at the time then, if they're calling him a kid. Though Lovecraft did use that appellation for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, he was born in 1912.
Right.
So, yeah, he wouldn't have been very old at all. And, Shea went on to be a correspondent of HP Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, and August Derleth. It seems his first sort of entry into that world was through Clark Ashton Smith. He later became a writer of weird fiction, and he actually did several stories in the Cthulhu mythos. He also did a couple of posthumous collaborations with Lovecraft. And early in his career, he sent stories to Lovecraft for critique. So Lovecraft helped him the same way as he helped like R.H. Barlow and people like that, and Robert Bloch.
Right, yeah, of course.
And one of his stories, The Necronomicon, was written before Lovecraft's death in 1937. Lovecraft read it and annotated the manuscript.
Nice.
Other noted stories of his is The Haunter of the Graveyard, which was in Tales of the Cthulhu mythos. The Snouted Thing, which was reprinted in Search of Lovecraft in 1991. That was a posthumous collaboration with Lovecraft. So he did the same as Derleth did. He took something out of the commonplace book and fleshed it out.
Right.
He also did quite a lot of poetry. The Dream World of H.P. Lovecraft poem, A Walk in Providence, H.P.L's Gravestone. He was also a prolific writer of essays, and he wrote essays about H.P. Lovecraft, like H.P. Lovecraft and Films, The Lovecraftian Saga, Timeless Lovecraft, on the literary influences which shaped Lovecraft, and an introduction to the Cthulhu mythos. They were collected by S.T. Joshi in Search of Lovecraft, which is a collection of essays, fiction, and poetry. And it was introduced by Robert Bloch with an afterword by Donald Wandry.
Oh.
So I need to get hold of that. I looked on Amazon, and
is it out of print?
It's one of those.
Or small press,
it's out. Yeah. But if anybody knows where I can get a hold of a copy of In Search of Lovecraft by J. Vernon Shea, let me know. So there we go.
And he's not a writer that we've covered yet on the Innsmouth Book Club. So that's another name to add to our ever-expanding list, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we should definitely cover the one that was in the Tales of the Cthulhu mythos, because I remember that being really good.
Yes.
Haunter of the Graveyard. I seem to remember that being a really good one.
Now, we do get one other mention in the letters of both of these stories together. This is 15th of April, 1931, and this is from Lovecraft to Smith. And here we go. Strap yourselves in.
Here we go. Here we go.
7th ultraviolet plenilune, 98,460th year of the crumbling of Yadith Citadel after the coming of the viscous and unspeaking ones. Is surpassed himself with that one.
That's a belter, isn't it? Plenilune.
And it's just a brief mention here. The City of the Singing Flame is certainly a memorable thing, and I was glad to learn that Wandry shares my opinion. No, I can't pick any flaws in the embalming towel, for despite my authorship of the band In the Vault, I have not a shred of inside knowledge of the profession. One has to bluff beyond one's scholastic means now and then, as I have done with geology and zoology in my new towel. I'd hate to have any genuine scientists go over the fine points of that narrative. So it's basically saying what we said there. You do a bit of research, you put down what sounds right, but, you're not an expert in the field, but there's enough there to get you through the story. It sounds authentic, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. Geology, that's got to be Colour Out of Space, right?
That could be, if that was, 1931.
Oh, no, because Colour Out of Space was written in 1927. Interesting.
Mountains of Madness?
Oh, possibly. That has geologists in it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you'd be talking presumably about different ages or eras of...
Yes. Well, At the Mountains of Madness was written in February and March 1931.
Oh, that'll be it then.
That'll be it then. Wow, nice one.
Interesting. Yeah. And in the vault, in case you haven't read it, it's a rather similar sort of story, isn't it? It's Poe-esque.
I love it. Yeah.
And spoiler alert, the ending is where the coffin lid gives way and the protagonist is grabbed by the ankles by the corpse of his rival.
Yeah.
So very similar sort of feel.
Yeah, again, it's that black humour. It's one of Lovecraft's funniest, I think.
Yeah, and just one quick final mention about that idea of fire in Auburn or the surrounding area. So this is a letter, 14th of August 1931. This is from Lovecraft to Smith. Kadath in the cold waste, hour of the lighting of the beacon in the tower of the yellow masked entity. Nice. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly. And it says here, sorry the menace of the flame god still hangs over Auburn. You'll probably get a chance for a trip later on, and with your milder climate, a later date won't matter. So again, just reinforcing that idea that Smith was writing about the fires that were happening around Auburn, which I guess was also a reason he didn't travel so much. If from the sound of it, that's curtailing any ideas he has of making a trip anywhere.
Yeah.
So that concludes our 2 stories for today. We hope you enjoyed listening. And of course, if you do have any comments, suggestions, or corrections of pronunciations, we're always happy to hear from you. And I believe we have a couple of new subscribers as well.
Indeed, yeah. Just want to thank them. Thanks to David A. Riley and Rachel Parkinson for joining our ranks of Patreons and helping us spread our tentacles.
Yep, they've both signed up on Buzzsprout now, so you can subscribe to us on Buzzsprout, and that'll give you access to all the bonus episodes, both for Strange Shadows and for the Innsmouth Book Club. And of course, you can also follow us and sign up on Patreon at 3 levels of membership. So that's it for now. With that, it's goodbye from me, Rob Hoyton.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes.